What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. It's just me today because Molly's feeling a little under the weather, and before we get to questions, I need to send a huge thank you to James McBride, who is our latest patron to join at the Jedi Council level. Not only that, but he happens to be Ulfor Bombassa from Revenge of the Sith, so this is a very special and exciting patron for us. Thank you so much for joining up, James. Our first question comes from Andrew Kylo Ren, who asks what I think of the Star Wars Newsnet rumor that the Benioff and Weiss series will be Old Republic. I mean, this is something that we've been speculating on for a while. I think it makes perfect sense for them to handle the more ancient side of Star Wars, considering their background with Game of Thrones. And I think that they're probably going to target kind of a Game of Thrones demographic in a way. I think that'll probably be the tone that they're going for. So do I think this rumor is true? I mean, I don't know, but I hope that it is, because I think that that would be a good direction for Star Wars to head. There's a lot of material to be mined there. We already know about the Jedi Sith Wars and the Mandalorian Wars, and that's just stuff that's been barely mentioned in the current canon. And of course, they could do any number of other things. I don't know what they'll cover, but I think that Benioff and Weiss would handle that very well. It's also something that I just think that as we continue to get more Star Wars stories, they're probably going to branch out into kind of these different audiences. I don't think that every Star Wars movie has to appeal to every Star Wars lover at like the same level every time. Like, I think that some of the movies might be more geared toward a younger audience. I mean, there were rumors that Rian Johnson's upcoming trilogy would be rated G. I don't think they mean that young, but like, let's say just for the sake of argument that his might be geared for a younger audience, and the Benioff Weiss series might be aimed at an older audience. Like, I think the movies could potentially branch out a little bit like that and kind of target different kinds of audiences to bring in to Star Wars as a whole. And like, the Game of Thrones type audience, I would say, would be a little more mature. I don't think they're going to go like Game of Thrones with it, with the amount of violence and sexual content that are in Game of Thrones, but I think that the feel of it, the kind of medieval, almost like ancient sort of ruling houses and things like that, I don't know. I could just see it being very different from what we're used to. And I think that that is probably a good idea to keep things a little bit varied between projects. Alden Diaz wants to know if we think Star Wars will evolve over the next 20 years as prequel era kids grow up to become filmmakers. I think that's a really interesting point. And yeah, in your question, you say that right now, people like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson and Gareth Edwards, they're people that grew up with the original trilogy. And a lot of what they're doing, and we're also talking about Jon Favreau, for example, in The Mandalorian. That looks very original trilogy inspired. And yeah, I think part of that is because that's what inspired them when they were younger and when they were starting out being filmmakers, and now they kind of want to pay homage to that. I think that you're correct. When we see the prequel era kids grow up and they start making movies, I think they're going to be more inspired maybe by the prequel eras. So yeah, I think that Star Wars is always going to be kind of this shifting thing, and what feels like Star Wars to this current generation of filmmakers might be different to the next generation. So yeah, I think that there's always room for it to be flexible and change like that. And I am looking forward to seeing kind of how the next generation interprets things. I think that it could be really cool to see. Mike Steckel asks why Dooku didn't realize the Nightsisters in the Clone Wars couldn't have been Jedi, since assassination isn't the Jedi way. I like this question because it is not the Jedi way, and it's pointed out in Attack of the Clones. Mace Windu says that assassination isn't in Count Dooku's character. That's why he doesn't think that Dooku's behind anything at the start. And yeah, I agree that it shouldn't be in their character in the Clone Wars, but it does kind of fall into their character in the book Dark Disciple, which would have been a Clone Wars episode, and they would have decided to send Quinlan Vos to assassinate Count Dooku. And it would have been like with a heavy heart that they make this decision, but it's another one of those things where the Jedi are kind of losing who they are in the Clone Wars. and they decide that they're going to assassinate someone, and that's just not what they are about at all, but they see it as the most expedient way to end the war. And I think that's really interesting to explore, the idea of like, well, is it worth it to betray what we believe to our core if it means saving lives? Like, I don't know, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but I think that Dooku, assuming that the assassins were Jedi, he already knew that the Jedi had kind of lost their way. I think that's part of the reason he fell. He saw that this was coming, and he's like, well, I might as well just jump the gun. And like, I don't think that Dooku, he's kind of presented as more evil in the Clone Wars series. In the movies, he is more a guy who's like, I'm trying to sacrifice some lives to save the galaxy, and he's trying to end the corruption of the Senate. And that's another question. Like, he also sacrifices everything he once stood for, and I would say sacrifices lives, the lives of innocents, to achieve his goals, even though I think deep down they were noble goals in a sense. But yeah, it's this weird debate. Anyway, I think that Dooku had already figured that the Jedi were going to try to assassinate him at one point or another, and I mean, he ultimately was right, so that's why he assumed that they were Jedi. Mr. J.D. Rice wants to know what would have happened to Jango Fett if he didn't die. Would he still be used for cloning, or would he have been imprisoned? I think that probably both would have happened. In Attack of the Clones, Yoda tells Obi-Wan to capture Jango Fett so they can question him, but as you state in your question, that the Kaminoans needed Jango Fett, and losing him was like this major setback because they were having to stretch his DNA. So I think by that point, the Republic would have been like, well, we do need him. So they would have imprisoned him, probably questioned him. Maybe they would have figured out more details. I mean, they started pulling on this thread in Attack of the Clones where Jango Fett was recruited by Tyrannus and not Sifo-Dyas, and they didn't know anything about Sifo-Dyas and how he had started this clone army, and they kind of explore that at the end of the Clone Wars series when it was way too late. So with Jango Fett, maybe they would have started that investigation much earlier. Maybe they would have caught on that something fishy was going on. Even they already knew that in Attack of the Clones. They should have known, like, maybe we need to look into these clones a little more closely, but they didn't. Anyway, like, I do think that they probably would have pieced together some of that information if Jango Fett had been alive, but he would have had to talk. Maybe he would have kept quiet. I don't know. But we'll never know because Mace Windu cut his head off. Jacob Kasnoff asks what we thought of Patton Oswalt's Citizen Filibuster in Parks and Recreation, where he pitched his idea for Star Wars Episode 7. I mean, this is from years ago, but I did want to talk about this question just because Molly and I love Parks and Recreation. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well, so I'll talk about it by myself. But that show is hilarious and amazing. I also think that filibuster is hilarious. But if that were reality, I would have hated it. I mean, it sounds like kind of quintessential just nerd word vomit where they're just like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then he brings in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe crossover, which it's all like just hilarious and played for laughs and way too extreme, like just the nerd's perfect dream of what could be. But if it had actually happened, I would have hated it. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where we left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content like audio commentaries for the films and the Clone Wars series. And this week we did Mystery of 1,000 Moons, so that's available right now if you're interested. On to YouTube questions. Stir asks when we think we'll see the Grisk from Thrawn Alliances pop up next. I think we're probably at least going to hear about them in Thrawn Treason, coming out this summer in July, I think. That's the next book in the Thrawn series. So yeah, I have to imagine that maybe Eli is going to come into Imperial space to talk to Thrawn and be like, yeah, the Grisk are coming to attack, and Thrawn's going to have to decide whether he is going to stay loyal to the Empire or if he's going to go and help his people in the unknown regions. And then Ezra kind of makes that choice for him, I guess, in Star Wars Rebels. But yeah, that's where I would expect the Grisk to come back. And for now, I think they're probably going to stay self-contained in that Thrawn series. I don't know if they're going to break into the more mainstream Star Wars. Like, I don't think they're going to pop up in a movie or anything, but who knows? Zach Langdon wants to know if Talzin is the biological mother to Savage Opress, or if he and Maul just have the same father. From what I can tell, they just have the same father. I think Talzin is the mother, the biological mother to Darth Maul, but not Savage Opress. And it's really hard to tell the family tree of Dathomir because, like, you have a character like Mother Talzin, who everyone refers to as Mother, and all of the Dathomir Night Brothers call each other brother, and the Nightsisters call each other sisters. And it's like, okay, I don't know what's a real brother and what's just like a Night brother, but it sounds like Maul and Savage are literal biological brothers. And I mean, Farrell might be too. Farrell might be Savage's real brother. Again, I can't tell, and it's not really clear anywhere. I tried to do some research on this to get like a definite answer, and it's like very much up in the air. So, you know, Farrell and Maul might also be half brothers, and who knows? But the point is, I think that Talzin is for sure Maul's mother, but I don't believe she is Savage's mother. Darth Bong asks what I think of the Yuuzhan Vong coming to the Old Republic era. Yeah, I don't see that happening, and I don't really think that I want it to. Like I said earlier with the Benioff Weiss stuff and mining the Old Republic era, I think that there's plenty of stuff to work off of already. We can talk about the creation of the Jedi Order, the creation of the Sith Order, the 100-Year Darkness, the Mandalorian Wars, the ongoing Sith and Jedi Wars, the creation of the Rule of Two. Like, I can think of so many stories to tell already that sliding the Yuuzhan Vong in there on top of all that seems unnecessary, and I think that the Yuuzhan Vong might have been reinterpreted into the Grisk that I also just talked about. So I don't know that we're ever going to see the Yuuzhan Vong again, although they did almost make it into the Clone Wars, so it's like they're on the periphery. I just don't know that we're going to see them, like I said with the Grisk. I don't know if they're ever going to come into like super mainstream Star Wars media. Carbonite Hunter wants to know what I wish there was more of in the sequel trilogy. Right now, what I'm missing is just big ol' space battles. I mean, the Battle of Starkiller Base was there, and the evacuation of Dakar was there, but I feel like we haven't had anything that's like the Battle of Yavin, or the Battle of Endor, or the Battle of Scarif, or the Battle of Coruscant. Like, those are the big, large-scale space battles that I really live for, and I don't know what it is about them. Like, we just get all these pilots all of a sudden thrown into the mix, and we don't know who they are, but we get these flashes of them, and they have these little character moments, and then they die, and I don't know, that just draws me in. I really am compelled by these people who are giving their lives, even though we don't know anything about them. Like, Grizz Fricks is a perfect example in Return of the Jedi. Like, he has one shot where he screams about how he's going to explode, and then he does. And I'm like, well, I want to know more about you. Like, you gave your life for this important mission, and I know nothing about you, and I would like to. So, I don't know what it is. Just, I love pilots, and I want to have a little more focus on them. So, something like the Battle of Scarif, which is still probably my top tier, like, just Star Wars battle. You got something cool going up in space. You got something cool going on down on the ground. It's like the Battle of Endor, but, you know, done with today's technology, so it's just more impressive. So, yeah, I would like to see something like that in Episode 9. Elemental Jedi asks if we think a Lego Star Wars movie could work. I don't know. First of all, legally, I don't know how that would work because I think Warner Brothers does all the Lego movies. And right now it's been confirmed that the Lego Movie 1 and 2 and Lego Batman and Lego Ninjago, they all take place in the mind of like this young boy from the first Lego movie. I think that it's possible that that story could exist in that universe because, I mean, the Millennium Falcon and Lando and Han and Chewie and 3PO all popped up in the first Lego movie. But I don't think that they could do a full-on just Lego Star Wars movie. I think that Lucasfilm might be not crazy about that idea anyway, just because they have their own canon going on, and like, would people understand that this isn't part of it? They should be able to. Like, I think that most people would easily understand that, but I think Lucasfilm would be a little like, let's not take the chance. Would I watch it? Absolutely, because I love the Lego movies. I've watched all of them, and even the Lego Ninjago movie, which I watched that one on a plane, like, well, I liked the other three, I might as well watch this one, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I would definitely watch it. I really like their sense of humor and their sense of storytelling. I just don't really think it would ever happen. But that's all the time I have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below, or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.